Hey guys, Nebraska Farm Boy here, and I started making knives 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember exactly when it was. And you know, each of those blades takes hours and hours of labor to make them. And you know, they never seem to add up very quickly. But you know, I was just looking at my collection today. I was like, you know, I've made a few blades, and they are varying degrees of success. And these aren't all my blades because I gave away some of the blades, so I can't show you those. But yeah, I was just looking and seeing that, yeah, there was more blades here than I kind of thought. So I figured that maybe it would be amusing at any rate to show you some of my failures and a few of my successes. Now for those of you who actually watch this channel, some of these blades look familiar. I showed you how to make the throwing star, how to make the throwing axe, how to make this blade and this blade, and probably, oh, and that blade too, and that blade. I showed you how to make some of these blades, but other of these blades might be a little bit amusing to look at. Now this one is a very interesting one because it was probably one of my most epic fails. I've never shattered a knife before until that one. And that was because I hardened it to about the hardness of glass and then threw it at a tree and it shattered. And it just broke into all these pieces. I could not believe it when I saw it. It was a very sharp blade, but other than that, it absolutely shattered. Now this one was my first blade that I ever tried to make. It was made out of an old file. It's actually not a blade, it's just a twisted up piece of steel, but it was a good start. It was made out of an old file. I just wanted to get started in it. I knew nothing about it, didn't take any time to research it, and I just grabbed the angle grinder and started grinding away and messed it completely up. I just keep this around to remember from where I have started, you know. Moving on up the food chain, this was really probably my first semi-successful blade. Too bad I made it out of soft steel because I didn't know the difference at that time. And it's really not like a usable blade because it will not hold an edge, and it also bends. But really, it was not a bad blade for a beginner. I made completely with an angle grinder, well, maybe a few other tools, but nothing substantial, and it was not a bad blade for a beginner. I was very pleased with it, and to be honest, I still, you know, it's still a fond little relic. Here's another interesting blade that I made. This one was supposed to be designed for self-defense. It's a double-edged dagger, absolutely terrible. It's made out of an old file, a piece of cedar, and wrapped with hay bale twine. And and then over here, that piece of brass is actually a hose connector. And it really, if you step back and look at it, it looks like a piece of trash thrown together. But I was pretty proud of it at the time, and it does look kind of cool. You gotta admit it. Now this was the biggest knife I ever made, or at least the longest knife I ever made. This one was supposed to be a double-edged sword, but as I got to going, I decided I didn't want a double-edged sword. Instead I made it with a harpoon point, so this has a double edge here, up to that point, and then it's not double-edged, it's just single-edged. It turned out alright, I would say. The handle is starting to come unraveled there, just needs to be glued back in place. My sister says that it looks like a bread knife. I find that very saddening. So comment down below, does this look like a bread knife? Probably most of you will say yes, and I'll be sad. But anyways, that's okay. I call it the alligator sticker. I think it looks somewhat like an alligator, and it was kind of fun. And then this one I built as a, well, it was built for cutting weeds. It's sort of a machete, a light machete. I like it. It's useful. I use it quite often. Turned out very well. I think it's got like a, I want to say it's like a 14-inch blade on it. It's a nice medium-sized machete. Then this one was another one built for self-defense, a double-edged dagger per usual. I kind of had an obsession with them at one time. It wasn't a terrible little knife. It's definitely a little bit odd looking, but I mean, it wasn't overall a terrible knife. I do still kind of like it to this day. And then there was this one. This is a more recent creation, probably one of my best knives I've ever made. This is just a big old Bowie, or at least my interpretation of it. I have a lot of fun with this thing. It's just a heavy, nice knife. You can chop things up with it. It's a lot of fun. I really liked how the handles turned out on these ones. Homemade pins and everything. I was very pleased with this knife. Oh, here's a really odd thing I made one time, and this one is a 3-edged blade made out of a triangle file. It was a lot of fun to make. The edges were never overly sharp, though they are, I mean, they're somewhat sharp. They'll cut you if you like ran your thumb along them. it was just fun to make, and then I like taped this pen over end over the top of it, and then you could just put a cardboard sheath over it, and then you just stuck it in your shirt, and it looked like a pen. It was so much fun. This blade is just a regular grunt blade that I made for farm use. Not much to say about it. This one was actually one that I carried for self-defense for a long time. I still like it. I still might go back to carrying it. I don't know. It just depends. You can only carry so many knives, though. I like it. It really turned out well. It keeps an edge pretty well. It's actually made out of an old T-post, which is pretty surprising, but it worked out pretty well. Over here we have this cool little thing. The handle is really weirdly shaped. I don't know why I shaped the handle like that, but it was a lot of fun to make. It also is incredibly dirty. The thing about these are they're all made of high carbon steel, so if they get the slightest bit wet, they start to rust, which is really sad. This one is actually also made out of a T-post, holds an edge reasonably well. I was kind of pleased with this one too. It at least looks nice at any rate. So yeah, there you have it. Those are some of the blades that I've made over the years. It's a lot of fun to make these things. I make them all with basic tools. Mainly an angle grinder is the only power tool I use. I do use a bench grinder some, and a drill press, and maybe a couple other tools, but when it comes to grinding them out, it's really the angle grinder that I use mainly. So, you know, it's really a challenge. They aren't the prettiest knives ever, but they are serviceable blades, and it's really been quite a thing, for lack of a better word, quite a thing, to get to a point where I could actually take a piece of steel and carve it out with an angle grinder into a knife that actually holds an edge. Always new knife builds coming out, always new stuff on knives. If you like knives, well, you might like Nebraska Farm Boy. Subscribe if you like Farm Boys, and we will see you next time.